Number 10. Arrested for tipping. In 2019, a woman from New York was arrested for leaving a tip at a restaurant in Florida. The tip was for the shocking amount of $5,000. And while this might sound like a good deed, something that should have made the server's whole month, it was actually an evil act of revenge. At least, that's according to the police. The perpetrator's name is Serena Wolf, and she was charged with grand theft. She apparently used her boyfriend's credit card to not only pay for her meal, but to leave the whopping $5,000 tip on her $55 check. Prior to Serena eating at the Clear Sky Cafe in Clearwater Beach, she had gotten into an argument with her boyfriend. According to what he told officers, she was angry that he refused to pay for her plane ticket back to New York. Following the argument, Serena got drunk, she got mad, and she left a fat tip just to get back at him with his own card. She figured if he wouldn't pay for her flight, he could stand to lose the $5,000. She was charged, but as for the money, it appeared to be long gone, split between the server and the rest of the workers at the establishment. After all, it wasn't the cafe's fault they were the recipients of Serena's revenge. Number 9. Cold chicken. In the middle of June back in 2017, chaos erupted at a Quick Chick food stand in Georgia. Latasha Denise Smith and her father, Nathaniel Smith, became enraged when the chicken they just purchased was too cold for their liking. They confronted the owner of the stand, Jeanette Norris, about their chili chicken. But instead of just talking to Jeanette like normal people, they became irate, violent, and confrontational. Latasha then was caught on surveillance video punching Jeanette in the face and knocking her down, just before her father started throwing his fist at her daughter. Jeanette's daughter was only 15 years old at the time, 30 years younger than Nathaniel. The grown man punched the child, knocked her against a brick wall, and then took off running, all over some cold chicken. But don't worry, because this is one of those stories where the attackers really got what was coming. Nathaniel Smith was sentenced to 8 years in prison for aggravated battery and cruelty to children, plus 7 years of probation. His daughter was sentenced to 2 years in prison for aggravated battery. On the day of the sentencing, Jeanette and her daughter were present and made statements in court. And although their attackers were punished accordingly, it still won't take away the trauma of being beaten up over cold chicken. Number 8. Drive-through insanity. A woman was arrested in Oklahoma City back in 2010 for losing her temper at a McDonald's drive-thru. Her name is Sierra Steed, and she was 20 years old when the cops put her in handcuffs for public intoxication, an outstanding traffic warrant, and just being generally terrible in public. It all started just after midnight on a Tuesday. The police were called to the McDonald's restaurant. The manager of the joint told the cops that Sierra placed an order in the drive-thru, drove right past the first window where she was supposed to pay, and then pulled up to the second window and started getting belligerent. The employee there told her she needed to pay for her food, and that caused her to get more hostile and more disagreeable. She screamed at the employee, claimed that she had indeed paid for her meal when she definitely had not, then got out of her car. Like some kind of troll, she climbed into the drive-thru window and started flailing around, knocking milkshakes off the counter. She refused to leave, but was eventually forced out of the window. But here's the truly insane part. As if she was in the right, Sierra parked her car in the parking lot and just sat there staring at the restaurant. When the police showed up, she was still sitting there. The police realized she was drunk, and so they put her under arrest and carted her away to jail. Number 7. Dead at Little Caesars. In March of 2022, Little Caesars employees in San Antonio made an extremely disturbing discovery. Employees of the restaurant, located near downtown, came across a woman leaning on the wall behind the restaurant, bleeding to death. Shocked, not understanding what was happening, the employees immediately called the police. The cops arrived at about 11 o'clock at night to find a woman named Jessica Medina in a puddle of blood near a dumpster. She was alive when the Little Caesars employees had found her, but had bled out by the time the police arrived. Paramedics pronounced her dead at the scene. There was no accident either. The police are investigating Medina's death as a homicide. They discovered traumatic wounds to her head, suggesting she had been beaten viciously and then left behind the Little Caesars restaurant to die. After 42 years on this planet, the poor woman lost her life beside a dumpster outside a cheap pizza joint. It really doesn't get much more tragic than that. Number 6. Drunk at Taco Bell. In the summer of 2019, yet another drunk woman embarrassed herself at a fast food joint. This time, it was at Taco Bell. It was such a strange encounter for the local Oregon police that the department posted a woman's mugshot on their Facebook page, captioned, "Weirdest DUI arrest of the weekend." The woman is Eliana Aguilar. She pulled into the drive-thru of the Taco Bell in Beaverton, right in front of a police officer. When she came up to the window, there was a cop in the squad car literally right behind her. The cop could see everything she was doing, but that didn't stop her from acting completely ridiculous. She pulled a bottle of alcohol out of her car, leaned into the drive-thru window, and then poured the booze into the employee's mouth. It doesn't look like the employee was being forced to drink. Eliana was drunk and rambunctious and offered the employee a drink. That in itself isn't such an awful thing, but when the cop behind her saw what was happening and made the arrest, they found Eliana's blood alcohol content to be way over the legal limit. She was driving around wasted, giving away free shots to Taco Bell employees, so she was charged with a DUI and taken to jail. Number 5. Monkeying around. In August of 2014, outside of a restaurant in Beaumont, California, a woman was attacked by a monkey. According to a spokesperson for the Riverside County Animal Services, John Welsh, a 35-year-old woman from Cherry Valley was the victim of the simian attack. She was sitting outside Antonio's Pizza at about 3:30 in the afternoon on a Sunday when she was brutally attacked by a capuchin monkey. She had to be treated at the hospital for a laceration to her forearm, and she was traumatized by the totally unexpected incident. The last thing anyone anticipates while they're sitting outside a pizza restaurant in the middle of the afternoon is to be the victim of a monkey assault. But of course, this wasn't just some stray monkey running through the streets. It was a pet, owned by a woman named Gwendolyn Ringel. She was forced to surrender her pet to Animal Services, who then impounded the primate while they figured out what to do with it. In other words, it went to monkey jail. The actual attack is even crazier than you're going to believe. It involved 3 monkeys. Gwendolyn had a bit of a monkey problem. She was passing by the restaurant on her way to the parking lot with her trio of primates in tow, when one of her monkeys got away from her, grabbed hold of the victim, and took a bite out of her arm like it was sinking its teeth into a juicy burrito. Because the monkey lady didn't have permits to own such animals, all 3 of them were taken away. The one responsible for the attack had to be put in quarantine for 6 months in case it had some kind of virus. Plus, Gwendolyn was forced to pay for its stay there. And then in the end, she wasn't even allowed to get her monkeys back. Number 4. Stung by a wasp. A 68-year-old British woman, an expat living in Spain, was in the beautiful city of Costa Blanca in May of 2022. She was dining at a restaurant and enjoying the warm Spanish weather when she got stung by a wasp. Normally, this wouldn't be a very big deal. Wasps are everywhere, and people get stung by them all the time. It's certainly better to be stung by a wasp than bitten by a monkey. Unless, of course, you're this woman, who suffered anaphylactic shock and died. Her heart stopped beating right there in front of the Hilltop Gastropub. Paramedics tried to bring her back to life by performing CPR, but it all happened so fast, there was nothing they could do. It was about 2 p.m. when the woman was stung by the wasp, sitting outside on the veranda with friends and family. And by 3 p.m., she was being taken away in the back of an ambulance. What happened was that this woman had likely gone her whole life without ever being stung by a wasp, so she never knew that she was deathly allergic to them. Then, on this fateful day, she figured it out the hard way. Her body went into shock. The wasp venom pumped into her veins, and that was all she wrote. Unfortunate, but totally out of the victim's control. There was just no way she could have prepared herself for such a random disaster. Number 3. Spiked in Bavaria. In late winter of 2022, a group of people drank some champagne at a bar in Bavaria, Germany. A 52-year-old man dropped dead. Others became violently ill, all after drinking from the same bottle of wine. Nobody had any idea what in the world was going on, as all these people started dropping like flies. It wasn't until later, when the police were able to test the champagne, that they found it spiked with the illegal drug ecstasy. It took a little while for the victims themselves to figure out that they had been poisoned, and by the time they did, it was too late for them to do anything about it. The employees at the restaurant called emergency responders. Then, when the paramedics arrived, there were 8 people collapsed on the floor and writhing in confusion and misery. These people had no idea what drug they'd just taken and were high out of their minds, freaking out. All 8 of them, between the ages of 33 and 52, were rushed to the hospital. All these months later, we still don't know what happened. The police say it was probably negligent homicide, but they don't know who slipped the liquid ecstasy into the champagne bottle, or for what purpose. It wasn't a targeted attack. Nobody had anything against this group of people. It may have been one of them trying to spice up the party, or they may have been given the wrong champagne bottle. Number 2. Mexico City tacos gone wrong. A man in Mexico City is facing charges of attempted murder after a brutal daylight attack at a restaurant in spring of 2022. The man, identified by Mexican authorities as Siddhartha N., picked up a boulder, hefted it over his head with both hands, and brought it down on the back of the skull of a 19-year-old named Andrew Nava. He did it in broad daylight, inside a taco restaurant in the trendy Roman neighborhood. The whole thing was captured on security cameras inside the restaurant. But what makes it so completely horrifying is that the attack was unprovoked. Andrew had been sitting inside the restaurant with his father when the man picked up the stone slab and tried to cave his head in for no reason. The two had never met. They had never spoken to one another. The attacker was simply a man who lived on the street in the Roma area, and at that moment when he walked past the restaurant, he decided to kill someone. It's scary because it could happen to anyone. You're trying to enjoy a nice meal in your favorite restaurant, the next thing you know, some random person is bashing you in the head with a rock. Luckily, Andrew was quickly brought to the hospital and was last reported in stable condition. He'll pull through, but it was a close call. He may lose his sense of smell permanently, but at least he'll be alive. Number 1. The sword break-in. A man in Florida has been arrested and charged with burglary after he used a sword to break in through the drive-thru of a Wendy's and stuff his face with a bunch of random food. His name is Philip Tran, and he committed one of the most bizarre burglaries in restaurant history. Northport officers were called at about 6:30 in the morning on a Tuesday in April of 2022. Philip had forced his way through the window with his samurai sword, then wreaked havoc inside the restaurant. He ate whatever food he could find, discharged a fire extinguisher, and then fled like a crazy person. The damages totaled about $300, and Philip was tracked down about an hour later. The next day, he told the police that he couldn't even remember what had happened. Apparently, Philip had been given medication by his doctor for ADHD and depression, but instead of curing his ailments, it caused him to black out and go on a crazy crime spree. He was released from prison soon after and ordered to seek a psychiatrist. Thanks for watching. Would you rather a rabid monkey or a whole swarm of wasps invade your next visit to a restaurant? Which would be more terrifying? Let us know in the comments, and be sure to hit that subscribe button and come back again real soon for more shocking videos. See you again. Bye.